Have you ever thought about the idea that reality might be like a hologram? Where every tiny piece actually contains the entire picture? Well, that's the mind-bending concept right at the heart of one of Buddhism's most incredible texts, the Avatamsaka Sutra. Today, we're going to dive into just one chapter to see how it uses this really cool literary pattern to paint a picture of a universe where everything, and I mean everything, is connected. Let's get into it.
Right out of the gate, the sutra just hits you with this epic, cosmic scale. This quote says, "The Buddha's body pervades all assemblies." So this isn't some meeting in a stuffy room. It's an event that's happening everywhere, all at the same time. This one idea sets the stage for a vision that's absolutely massive, profound, and, as we're going to see, deeply compassionate. Okay, so if this meeting is happening everywhere, who's actually on the guest list? Let's take a look.
The text calls it a sea of beings, which is just an amazing image. And these aren't just random onlookers. The sutra makes a point of saying they've all purified their minds so they can see the Buddha without distortion. So try to picture a stadium, but instead of sports fans, it's filled with the wisest beings from countless different worlds, and they're all perfectly tuned in to the same frequency. That's the scene we're dealing with here.
All right, so you've got this incredible gathering of enlightened minds. How in the world do they all share what they're understanding? Well, that brings us to the next section and a really clever idea at the heart of the sutra. Okay, this right here is the key to understanding the whole thing, the Liberation Gate. The slide defines it as a unique perspective, but I like to think of it more like a special key or a personal lens that each being looks through. The idea is that every single person, or being, here has found their own unique path to understanding reality. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. It's infinitely diverse.
And this whole idea of the Liberation Gate gives the sutra its rhythm, its core structure. You can see it on the slide. It follows this simple four-step pattern over and over again. First, we meet a group. Second, we learn their leader's name. Third, we find out about their unique Liberation Gate. And fourth, the leader shares a verse that expresses that insight. It's a really elegant way to organize such a massive amount of information.
Now that we know the pattern, let's put it to the test. We're going to zoom in and decode one of these gates by looking at the very first example from the chapter. All right, here we go. Following the pattern, the first group we're introduced to are the Celestial Kings from the great sovereign heavens. Now, let's meet their leader and find out about his specific Liberation Gate. Now, this is where it gets really cool. Just look at the connection here. His name is King Wondrous Flamesea, which sounds incredibly dynamic and active, right? A sea of flames. But his insight, his Liberation Gate, is all about the power of stillness in the cosmos. It's this beautiful paradox. His name and his understanding are like two sides of the very same coin. And here's the final step, the poetic payoff, his verse of praise. This is where his insight just comes to life. He sees the Buddha's nature as something that's everywhere, but at the same time is totally quiescent or still and ungraspable. It's the perfect way to put his unique gate into words, that deep, profound stillness you find at the heart of a raging sea of flames. Okay, so that's how the pattern works for one celestial king. But remember, he's not the only one speaking, not by a long shot. Let's zoom back out and see how all these individual voices come together to create a symphony of insight.
Yeah, so that verse from King Wondrous Flamesea, that wasn't a solo performance. It was really just the first note in a huge cosmic symphony.
And I'm not exaggerating. In this one chapter alone, that entire four-step pattern, name, gate, verse, repeats for beings from over 10 different celestial realms. We hear from the Brahma Kings. We hear from Devas of the sun and the moon. The list just goes on and on.
And this is where the genius of the sutra really shines through. At first, you might think, okay, isn't this getting a little repetitive? But it's not. It's a way of showing us that even though every single being has a totally unique path to understanding, all of those different gates open onto the exact same shared reality. It's like a symphony where every instrument plays its own distinct melody, but together they create one single harmonious masterpiece.
So, what's the big takeaway from this incredible structure? Why does any of this matter?
Well, this brings us right back to that idea of a holographic universe. The sutra's vision is that each one of these liberation gates, each unique perspective, is like a tiny fragment of a hologram. And if you've ever seen one, you know that if you break off a tiny piece and look into it, you don't just see a fragment, you see the entire image reflected inside it. That's the point here. Every individual's insight contains the whole of reality.
You don't even have to take my word for it.
The sutra says it perfectly itself. It uses the term Dharma gate here, which is just another way of saying liberation gate. In one Dharma gate, there are immeasurable gates. What that means is, within any single valid way of seeing the truth, you can actually find all the others. Each perspective is complete on its own, yet it also opens up into infinity.
And in the end, the sutra isn't just describing these ancient celestial beings, it's extending an invitation directly to us. If every perspective is a potential gateway to understanding the whole, then that includes yours and mine. It asks us to really think about what our own unique liberation gate might look like. What's the personal lens through which you see the world, and what truths does it reveal to you? It's a pretty powerful thought to leave with. Thanks for joining me on this tour.